A ton of players fantasize about playing high-level characters in epic campaigns for D&D.
But sometimes it's good to remember that it's not about the destination, sometimes it's about the journey. On the road to high-level D&D, you get to experience the best of what the game has to offer, levels 5 to 8.
These levels are often considered the sweet spot of D&D 5e. But what actually makes them so great?
Well, on the player side, these levels are a playground for character building and development, with some of the most exciting class features, spells, and feats coming online. But it's also still early enough that it avoids feeling overwhelming or overpowered.
And on the Dungeon Master's side of things, the game is at its most balanced and manageable, allowing you to create adventures across many genres, settings, and concepts that really speak to the real vision and power of a lot of what we love in fantasy storytelling.
These levels are heroic fantasy at its finest, and today we're going to dive into the reasons for both players and DMs, as well as both mechanically and narratively, why it feels so good. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get rolling.
Admin notice! Congratulations, Dungeon Dudes! You have been sponsored by the Dungeon Crawler Carl TTRPG! Oh, I know what this is.
What?
We're being sucked into the world of Dungeon Crawler Carl. If you don't know, it is an amazing book series by Matt Dinneman where the entire Earth has been transformed into a deadly, televised dungeon crawl filled with hilarious tongue-in-cheek humor and over-the-top action as humanity fights to survive after the world is basically destroyed. We love it. It's amazing. It's got tons of nerd culture references in it, and now, fittingly, it's becoming its own TTRPG.
And who wouldn't want to play in a hyper-violent, galaxy-spanning, audience-driven dungeon crawl where survival is content and everything wants to kill you?
The books really are amazing, and this game looks like it's going to be really fun. It's a skills-based system with highly customizable character creation. You even pick your race and class on floor 3, just like in the books.
And you can even play as either Carl or Princess Donut right out of the starter set, which are they are the two main characters in the book, and I really want to play as Princess Donut.
New achievement! Back the Dungeon Crawler Carl TTRPG on Backer Kit. Reward! Starter set acquired.
The starter set comes with a ready-to-play adventure set during Book 1, an atlas of the tutorial floors packed with locations, quests, and loot boxes, and interview show mechanics for between-floor broadcasts, because the audience demands drama.
So check it out right now on Backer Kit using our link below to back the Dungeon Crawler Carl TTRPG Unstoppable campaign today before the window closes. Thanks so much to Dungeon Crawler Carl for sponsoring this week's video. Okay, so stepping back for a moment, let's look at the character progression of each class. Because when we do that, when we open up the PHB and see the table, we can actually see that D&D has a story built into the classes and a bunch of assumptions about how that story progresses as characters gain levels. Characters go from being adventurers to heroes, and then from paragons to epic legends. These are what we call the tiers of play.
Levels 5 to 8 falls into Tier 2, the heroic tier, which goes until about level 11. But it's the first half of this tier specifically that has a special kind of magic to it, because of the way characters tend to progress through it.
Yeah, and when we zoom in on what characters actually gain from their classes between level 5 to 8, and then compare it to level 9, 10, and 11, it tells a really interesting story. First, kicking off this progression, most classes gain extra attack or access to 3rd level spells at 5th level. Then level 6 unlocks new subclass features for most classes.
Level 7 is packed with subclass features too, or just big core class features, or 4th level spells. And level 8 is your second feat for most classes. Every level brings new rewards from 5 to 8, so let's actually talk about some of these aspects in detail. Every level from the moment you hit 5 until your second feat option at level 8 are bringing some of the most valuable aspects of D&D online.
Level 5 is one of the biggest power shifts in the entire game of D&D. It's really hard to understate the impact that comes. It feels like with extra attack and those 3rd level spells, characters are standing head and shoulders over what they were from level 1 to 4. But interestingly enough, what's happening here is that beyond level 5, for the next couple levels, characters are actually getting a very smooth progression. They're getting meaningful power-ups, but not these really huge jumps that we saw at like level 2 and level 3. And then it jumps again at level 9.
Yeah. So let's zoom in on two of the biggest boosts that happen at level 5, extra attack for martial classes and third level spells for casters. Extra attack is flat out the biggest power shift for martial characters. You need to hit with both attacks, but in a manner of speaking, this is doubling your damage output. Also, spells like Conjure Minor Elementals, Divine Favor, any spell that buffs damage on a hit is now also twice as potent. Dual wielders utilizing Vex and Nick are now outputting some of the best damage in the game thanks to extra attack. And if you have a magic weapon, this is also likely doubling the potency of that weapon. Essentially, all weapon-based damage, anything that boosts weapons or influences weapon damage, is now twice as strong.
For spellcasters, we've got Fireball, Counterspell, Hypnotic Pattern, Lightning Bolt, Aura of Vitality, Fly, Haste, Hunger of Hadar, Slow, Revivify, Speak with Dead. It's a stacked list of things and effects that come online at this level. Characters get tons of new ways to solve problems and defeat encounters. And then, over level 6 and 7, almost all classes, rogues, they're the sole exception, another reason why I think they're one of the more underpowered classes in the game, all these classes get their second subclass feature, as well as some of their most important and iconic class features.
Between levels 5 to 8, classes are getting some of their best features that are going to really scale up their potential. We're talking Reliable Talent, Stunning Strike, Aura of Protection, Blessed Strikes, Roving, Font of Inspiration, New Eldritch Invocations, Sorceress Restoration, Flash of Genius. All of these come online over this little window of levels, and they're some of the most iconic features that these classes have.
And then 7th level brings us 4th level spells. Now, I personally think that aside from like Polymorph and Dimension Door, 4th level spells are generally a more incremental boost over 3rd level. 3rd level kind of sets the bar, and 4th level just kind of ekes it up just a little bit, right? But we're still getting Banishment, Conjure Minor Elementals, Death Ward, Black Tentacles, Greater Invisibility, Wall of Fire, Polymorph, and some really good summoning spells.
Then everyone's going to get their second feat at 8th level. This is where feat combos can come online if you're doing like Great Weapon Master, Polearm Master, or Sharpshooter, Crossbow Expert. There's a bunch of different combos that you can now have with your 1-2. Or this is also where you can max out your primary stat if you just grabbed Warcaster at 4 and need to get your spellcasting off the charts. Sometimes just boosting your primary stat is going to do a lot for your character. 8th level options solidifies your character into sort of that heroic fantasy that you were likely aiming for since you conceptualized them. So now they are the hero that you always imagined them to be.
Yeah, lots of character options to choose from by this level means that characters feel really distinct and fully realized, but you're still getting fresh options. It's like you're out of the mess of your 20s where you were still figuring things out, and now you're getting into your 30s and you've got a steady paycheck and like you've got life figured out, but like things are still going really well for you and it's all coming in. Like you're living the ideal, like, this is the prime time.
Are you saying the 40s is high-level D&D where it's utter chaos and we're grasping at straws to try to...
We're not talking about that today. We're not going to think about that. My point here is that things have established themselves. The new things are still rolling in, but at a pace that feels manageable, but also still exciting. Plus, multiclassing now starts to actually feel viable as you can combine 5 levels in one class with 1 to 3 levels of another class and feel like your character is solidly outlined because you're getting to combine 2 subclass features and still get a feat along the way and extra attack and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Players have lots of options at these levels, but I think it's important that everything still feels manageable and not totally overwhelming. When I played a 20th level spellcaster, it was a lot to track.
Yeah.
By that point, I had so many spells that I had to try to remember, too many magic items I forgot about, a bunch of class and subclass features. My character sheet was packed, and on any given turn, while trying to focus on story, narrative, combat, I was also trying to decide which of my 500 options was best for the current situation, and I often forgot a lot of things. Levels 5 to 8 feel so manageable. I have the tools I need to be powerful and do my cool things, but I'm not overwhelmed by trying to manage a massive list of spells and abilities.
Now, in my opinion, the smooth progression of level 5, 6, 7, 8 sort of stops at level 9. That's when 5th level spells come online and we hit another big power spike moment. What Comparing back to the last couple levels where it felt like everything was building on top of one another, once we get into 9, 10, 11, it's just like we are ramping up to 6th level spells and those big, huge subclass features now, and we're cranking things up a notch because it's time to fight dragons.
And I do think that that's why when you get to level 9 and higher, as a DM, it can start to be a little bit harder to manage. Whereas both the players feel from 5 to 8 like they are progressing in each level. They're like, oh, more cool stuff. But for the DM, it actually isn't breaking
Yeah.
anything, and you're like, oh, I can manage this.
Something about these levels for the dungeon master makes it really fun, rewarding, and balanced. You have to do work, but it's both forgiving of mistakes. The players are resilient in a way that at lower levels, like you just killed them instantly if you made things too hard, but now they can actually survive things. And if it's too easy, it's fine. And you're not likely at these levels to have a plot or a quest that is suddenly short-circuited by your players having a weird ability at higher levels that you didn't know that they were going to have, right? Like,
Or that you forgot about.
yeah,
Because again, it's even a lot for the DM
Yeah.
to keep track of everything. And I do think that because of the incremental rise in power here, a 5th level character actually could survive anything
Yeah.
that an 8th level character could defeat. I think that that's really smooth, and it's tempered the progression between those levels. So it feels like the players are getting new exciting options, but the DM is able to manage it, and the design philosophy stays relatively similar as they progress through those levels. Level 5 characters can survive an adult dragon attack, probably not defeat it, but they can survive. And then later, at level 8, they can face and kill that dragon. They can push themselves to the limits against threats, they can Nova their way through a combat encounter that's weighted against them, and they can breeze through enemies that were major problems for them at lower levels. When it comes to those big threats, I think it's important that death is also very meaningful at these levels, and consequences very much matter. Players have Revivify, but they don't have Raise Dead. They have Lesser Restoration, Remove Curse, and Dispel Magic, but not Greater Restoration and Regenerate. They have enough tools to mitigate lots of danger, but when things go poorly, they can't just shrug it off and ignore their terrible decisions or dramatic failures.
I would also say as a DM, between levels 5 to 8, you get to use the biggest pool of monsters in an effective way that the game has to offer. Not only are there just fewer high-level monsters in the books in general, but challenge rating 1 and 1/2 monsters are still relevant when you use them in large quantities at level 5 and 6. At level 8, a goblin army or a horde of orcs or an undead army, they feel like relatively real threats, even if the individual members of those forces would be crushed by the player characters, right? But like the army still is a scary thing, even if that army is composed of relatively mundane participants. So it adds a level of credibility to the world building as well. And you can make those minions tougher by adding the leaders and the bosses and the mages and stuff in it. A level 8 party, again, can fight young dragons. You put them up against an adult red dragon, it's terrifying, but not something that's like so outside the party's capabilities of dealing with, even if they couldn't defeat it in a flat-out battle.
Yeah, players have a lot of cool options, but the number of things they can do which are going to break the adventure outright are still quite limited. Sure, you might run into a situation where the party uses a sending spell when you wanted them to deliver a message, but they aren't going to be teleporting across the world. Yeah, they can dimension door past the dragon, but they only have 1 or 2 castings of their 4th level spell slots. So they have to plan carefully, and they're going to be using resources, and that's kind of what we love about D&D is did they overcome the problems by expending their resources? And I think that the balance at these levels is perfect.
It is about that kind of the scales of limitations and options at the same time. Low levels, players feel really, really limited. They don't have a lot of options. By high levels, you have so many options, it's overwhelming. But here, it's a really nice equilibrium between these two things. and it all feels manageable. And I think the most important thing for me narratively, like the point that I really want to end on, is that I feel like these levels of play capture the widest swath of what we see in fantasy and science fiction media. Like, if you pluck any character out of a random story that's in the fantasy genre, they're probably level 5 or 6. Like Aragorn or Legolas or Gimli or maybe even Gandalf. There's the famous article, Gandalf was a 5th level fighter, right? It delivers on what you expect from the genre of fantasy, generally speaking.
Yeah, usually in our fantasy stories, we do not see characters fighting gods. Sometimes you do at, like, if it's a long show that goes on a while and goes to very high fantasy
Yeah.
places. But generally speaking, a lot of our fantasy stories are grounded, but the main characters are heroic and above average compared to everybody else. Levels 1 to 4, you're another soldier,
Yeah.
but 5 to 8 is where you are the hero. You are that standout character. You're the main character of the story now. You have powers and abilities beyond the people around you, but you're still threatened by an army or a single dragon or the evil lich. It's all still terrifying.
And you get to play in both those fields because characters are in the mid-range of power. It would be okay for the characters to interact with a god at these levels or an ancient dragon at these levels. They're not going to be fighting and defeating those things, but they're able to interact with them. Similarly speaking, the players can interact with the goblins or the kobolds, and enough of those goblins and kobolds are still going to scare them. So the low levels and the high level stuff gets to play in this field, whereas by the time you get to very, very high levels, like, there's a limit to Tucker's kobolds.
Yeah.
There is.
Because at a certain point, you can wipe out a dungeon with spellcasters and marshals. Doesn't matter if they're throwing flaming logs at you. You've punched a god in the face by this point. So these are some of the reasons why we do think that, like, 5 to 8 are the best part of D&D.
Yeah, and so if you've experienced that sweet spot, it's good to know why, right? And it really is something that is mechanically in the DNA of the game, and whether it was done intentionally by the designers, and there's apocryphal stories about what the intention was, because there's always been this impetus of, like, would there be a way to extend that sweet spot of D&D? And many RPGs have tried. I think a lot of games exist in that in that area. Like, I do think that, like, Daggerheart and Pathfinder 2nd Edition definitely feel like they're living in the power level of the level 5 to 8 of D&D more so.
And I will say that as much as I think that this is very much the sweet spot of D&D, there is certain values that I admire about early level D&D, and there are certain values that I admire about high level D&D. Sometimes after you've been playing for a while, you want to feel like you could take out a god. And sometimes when you're just starting a campaign, you want 2 goblins to be terrifying. And there's value in both of those aspects. But I do think that when you are imagining your heroic fantasy, 5 to 8 is when it feels the richest for what we've all kind of determined most fantasy feels like.
Well, it reflects, it's where your expectations conform to your experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas as soon as we get into high level D&D, there do become certain stories that don't work because the players have abilities that circumvent important complications or problems in those stories, right? Like, The Lord of the Rings is not the same story if Gandalf could have just teleported everybody to Mordor.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what's the story at that point?
Game of Thrones would have been a lot different if there was a bunch of people with meteor swarm and teleportation and power word kill and
Yes, right? And so it is about the narrative as much as it is the actual numbers, right?
Yeah.
Because the characters get powers that impact the world, not just like make number go up, right? And a lot of video games generally speaking, video games don't let players experience the kind of transformative way of traversing and interacting and moving through the world that D&D does, because most video games, your character power is just number go up.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think that that's one of the downsides, say, of other approaches to this problem of like, if it's just number go up, like 4th edition was a lot of number go up. And they kind of removed the abilities that let players impact the world in a more interesting way. But it's interesting to have those elements at play.
So we want to hear from you. Do you love levels 5 to 8 the most? Do you think that the sweet spot actually extends up to level 11? Do you prefer early level play? Do you prefer high level play? What is your sweet spot for D&D? What are your favorite levels to play at? And tell us why in the comments below.
The videos that we make on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. We've got a fantastic Patreon. It's grown so much over the past year. We're so thankful and grateful to everyone who's joined us over on Patreon. We got lots of great stuff for you there, whether it's new subclasses, new content, new rules, stuff that you can use in your games, whether it's bonus live play content from us, or just videos of Kelly and I hanging out, or behind the scenes stuff of what we're working on. You can find it all on the Patreon. The links are down below.
Stay tuned for our upcoming actual play Seasons of Silence, a brand new story that we're going to be busting out here on the channel. You can check out all of our material that we have gathered for that to sort of advertise it for you right up over here.
And we got plenty more DM advice videos where we rhapsodic about D&D and other stuff right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. See you next time
in the dungeon.